Warm greetings to you all, dear participants and the virtual audience. You are welcome to the International Institute of Anthropological Applications. I'm Dr. P.D.Satyapal, General Secretary for Anthropological Association for Humankind. This International Institute of Anthropological Applications is a virtual institute created by the Anthropological Association for Humankind. The purpose of this institute is to promote anthropological research, particularly to address the issue-based issues, human issues. We want to promote issue-based anthropological research to prevent human problems and to address the human problems and to provide sustainable solutions by applying the anthropological knowledge and understandings to the contemporary human issues and global challenges. And with that intention, and we are offering these different courses to equip the students and scholars and faculty members and practitioners to encourage the lifelong learning to acquire the 21st century skills to address the complexities and cultural pluralistic societies, and to be effective and to be productive, to be cooperative, and to lead a respectful and responsible life, and to acquire the competencies that are useful to have peaceful social coexistence. And another important purpose of this institute is to unleash, enhance, and harness huge human potential in order to acquire the required competencies to make students and scholars and faculty and practitioners, every human, not only smart but also good, so that we can build the healthy societies and build the nations, so that human flourishment and advancement, and to promote global peace. So with this specific and vision, we have created this virtual institute called International Institute of Anthropological Applications. We spread anthropological applications and we develop the anthropological applications by applying the anthropological knowledge to human problems and to provide solutions to improve the human condition locally and globally. So with this brief introduction to the institute that offers the course on Ambedkar and Agenda for Nation Building. So under this, in this course, a series of lectures will be given by Professor P.D.Satyapal Kumar sir. He is a senior professor at the Department of Anthropology, Andhra University. So he is now our instructor for this course, and he has designed this course. Yeah, so he's a great authority on the subject. So he has years of accumulated wisdom to equip all of us to understand the Ambedkar's anthropological knowledge and insights for nation building. So with this brief introduction, I request Professor Satyapal Kumar sir to present his lectures.
Yeah, good evening, Dr. P.D.Satyapal and dear participants. I'm delighted to be back, in fact, now to deliver the second lecture in this series on Ambedkar and his agenda for nation building. As we have seen in the last, say, talk, we have understood the premise, the academic premise upon which Dr. Ambedkar, in fact, could build upon an encompassing, say, understanding, and also very vibrant practical solutions to the problems of India. And today's talk is much more, it forms much more core aspect of the whole, project. It is the ideas of Dr. Ambedkar on the society in India. Dr. Ambedkar, all through his academic and career, rather like in a sense career working for the society, he has dealt with the important project of social reconstruction. So he wanted to convert the unequal society in India into a democratic society. So that being his primary agenda, his ideas and then his basic understanding on the society itself becomes very important to like in a sense perceive Ambedkar's project actually. So in that way, Dr. Ambedkar in all of his writings, he was touching upon various aspects of the society and the kind of avenues for social change or social transformation rather. Sometimes he himself calls it as a blueprint for social revolution. But in this particular talk, friends, to understand his ideas on society in India, we will have to depend precisely on three, say, writings of his own. The first, I would dwell more, in on this particular, say, kind of a writing. Incidentally, this is the first of his publication, actually. As a student, master's student in Columbia University, New York, during 1913 and then 16. So that is a paper that Dr. Ambedkar has presented still as a student. He definitely would be around 24 years and few months. This paper has been delivered at Dr. Alexander Goldenweiser Anthropology Seminar on 9th May 1916. So the title of this particular paper is Castes in India, their mechanism, genesis and development. So this first of his researchers publication itself in fact now is path breaking, and then I to some extent in fact now I have also drawn on his another very scintillating book on annihilation of caste, and to deal with the caste among the non-Hindus, I've drawn upon Ambedkar's writings and speeches, volume 5, where he talks about the condition of the converts. And he was writing about nearly 170 pages on this particular topic. So these three being, say, predominantly the basis of my talk over here. So I will immediately go on to explain what Dr. Ambedkar has been talking with regard to India, the society in India, and especially the unique and then peculiar institution called as Varna caste system, which of course in the parlance of academic parlance of sociologists, anthropology, they call it as a Brahmanical system. But Ambedkar was not using that particular in his initial talks and all. But in any case, the peculiarities of this particular institution called as caste. So Dr. Ambedkar, in the opening lines of this particular talk, is made in kind of a paper. He says in the very first paragraph itself, I quote, saying that, in my opinion, as a student of ethnology, it is not just the explanations of functionality of a social institution, but an inquiry into their origin with all the objectives is humanly possible, unquote. So here Dr. Ambedkar, in fact, now getting into the origin, its development, and the mechanism which in fact now it works, and then how it has been perpetuating this whole say premise. He's entering into the premise from an anthropological background. We know pretty well, as we have seen, Dr. Ambedkar has taken 2 full courses in anthropology, especially on ethnology, with regard to society, and also in fact now his second paper, basically course, rather course, is on ethnology, and then study of religion, and then economic development. So he has like in a sense taken a full 1 year course. Two courses constitute 1 year. So he has brushed himself very thoroughly with anthropological understanding. So to understand, to explain this origin of this institution of caste, a social institution called as caste, Dr. Ambedkar says, as a student of ethnology, he is trying to come in actually. So naturally, he deals with this subject, explaining caste and caste system from the anthropological point of view. We will look into, in fact, now how he has been using this particular perspective in very well understanding a holistic perspective of the origin of caste in this society, and then how it, in fact, now has got structuralized and all. So, what is Ambedkar says is generally in anthropology and also in social sciences, social institutions are in fact no different institutions in the society, social, economic, political, or religious. They are explained in fact no with regard to their functionality, the structural aspects and all. And in very few cases, the origins of a social institution has been attempted at with a lot of success. But Dr. Ambedkar here, he's making a kind of a say premise, saying that it is possible, possible that the origins of social institution can be traced back, and especially the social institution called as caste, its origins in fact now can be traced, and that is the project that he has embarked upon. And he very humbly in fact now starts very humbly, and then he becomes incisive in his criticism, and then finally he comes up with his bold and novel and scientific kind of an explanation. He starts saying, again I quote, "Subtler minds and abler pens than mine have been brought to the task of unraveling the mysteries of caste. But unfortunately, it still remains in the domain of the unexplained, not to say of the ununderstood." So he says that uh, many of his predecessors who attempted to explain the origin or even explanation of caste, he is saying that their attempts have been inadequate. And he says, he also makes a complaint saying that his predecessors have committed several mistakes. They have committed several mistakes, and those mistakes, in fact, now have misled the investigations and explanations of caste. So he is there, in fact, now to bring upon proper correctives, actually. And he also makes a critical statement saying that sentiments must be outlawed from the domain of science, and things should be judged from an objective standpoint. So therefore, he says that his predecessors, in fact, now they are not fully being academic in that sense. They were to an extent, say, dogged by some sort of, in fact, no prejudices. So he also says that caste is an unusual or unnatural institution. Yes, any say kind of a basic understanding on caste and understanding on its structure, it appeals to any kind of a rational mind that it's an unnatural institution where the minority in the caste system control the affairs, or even in fact no like in a sense dominate being the majority. Then in fact no different several thousands of castes being organized into a kind of a unbroken chain, and this is being a complex kind of an operation, but happens, and then it has been thriving over centuries. Ambedkar says that it's an unnatural institution, and he also says that it is not just a local kind of an issue confined only to India. He says that if the Hindus, they migrate to different parts of the world, he was saying in 1915 that it becomes a global problem. Probably that is the reason why uh, 29 universities in just in United States of America, they have now have taken cognizance of the inequalities perpetuated by the caste system among those Indians who migrated to America. So Ambedkar was saying that in fact, no, it is not just a local problem of India. It might, in the days to come, become a world problem, which has become one actually. So coming back to the issue, to grapple with this particular kind of an issue, he says that, see, generally there are two kinds of uh, suggestions with regard to the emergence of institution of the caste. One is like, in a sense, the conscious command of a supreme authority. People say that in fact, no, castes have been say uh, created by the supernaturals. That is one position and all, which cannot in fact now be explained in the rational kind of this thing. And Ambedkar says it could be an unconscious growth in the life of a human society under peculiar circumstances. So here he is putting consciousness to the say what you call assumed existence, and an unconsciousness to the kind of a historical say circumstances, and how it has been thriving us now thereafter. So let us look into that particular. See, the consciousness and the unconscious, when he was using these words, he was taking a premise of psychology. Yes, Dr. Ambedkar, in explaining the aspects of caste, I would rather initially say, brief my dear friends. He has used two kinds of in fact no positions. One is a structural position, rather to be like, in a sense, to some extent, structural functionalist position, and then he has taken in fact now a behavioral kind of position. He talks about psychology, how the behavioral aspects contributed to the origin and the maintenance of that particular caste. So that is the core which I want to explain actually. That is one core in fact which Dr. Ambedkar has taken up as a kind of a baseline. So first thing Dr. Ambedkar says that Indian society, it has in fact now a cultural homogeneity. He observes that population of India is an admixture of different racial groups which migrated into India. He was saying that the population of India is an admixture of the Dravidians, Aryans, the Mongolians, Scythians, so on and so forth. So ethnically, Ambedkar says all people are homogeneous. I mean heterogeneous. Sorry, you cannot find a pure kind of an ethnic group in India. So therefore, he says all ethnic groups in this country have become heterogeneous, and there has been an admixture, in fact, of different kinds of groups. And he begins with a puzzle. That puzzle is, I quote, there is no country that can rival India, or Indian peninsula to be precise, with respect to the unity of its culture. It has not only geographical unity, but it has over and above a deeper and much more fundamental unity, the indubitable cultural unity that binds the people of this country from one end to the other. So he was saying that there is a kind of ethnic groups are heterogeneous, but there is some sort of a strong cultural homogeneity. But because of this homogeneity, that caste becomes a problem so difficult to be explained. So when you have this kind of cultural unity, how come in fact no so many castes, so many thousands of castes have come into being? If the Hindu society were mere a federation of mutually exclusive units, the matter would have been simple enough. But caste is parceling of already homogeneous unit. This is the problem which in fact now challenge which he was saying. Caste is parceling of already homogeneous unit, and the explanation of the genesis of caste is the explanation of this process of parceling. How different in fact no say people from different, how they have been parceled into a kind of a cultural homogeneity. And he was trying to explain this parceling, the process of this parceling actually. And to be more precise, Ambedkar says that he says that Indian society was originally a class society of Varnas, and later this class society of Varnas has been converted itself into a caste society through a process of classes crystallizing themselves sequentially into rigid endogamous castes. So this is like, in a sense, in sum, he says that this is how a class society has been in fact now become a caste society. In this process, he goes on explaining, saying that a caste is nothing but an enclosed class. A caste is nothing but an enclosed class. So this is where he gets into the review of literature or review of several works of different sociologists, anthropologists, who try to explain the origins of caste society, quote unquote origins. Because later on Ambedkar says that all the assessing, all evaluating all their theories, or in fact no some sort of a postulates, Ambedkar says that these people are not exactly explaining the origin of the caste actually. So the theories in fact no, they were called as authorities of caste, such as Emile Senart, and then Nesfield, and then H.H. Risley, and then Dengel Ibbotson. Probably they, all these names, they sound very familiar to us, because these are the people who gave different, in fact, no theories of the origins of caste, the origins and functions of caste, like Nesfield's occupational theory. Then you have Emil Senart's, in fact, no a kind of a religious kind of a explanation of a theory and all. Then you have Risley talking about racial theories of origins of caste, and then Ketkar talking about, in fact, now say the way of matrimony, endogamy, and then exogamy and all. So Dr. Ambedkar, in fact, now looks into all these things, verifies, assesses all these kinds of theories, and then he says that using a phrase used by Matthew Arnold, he says that the grand name, these grand names without the grand thing in it, very very harsh kind of a criticism, friends, very harsh. He says that they're all grand names but without a grand thing in it actually. And he says that to criticize them in a lump would be to say that they all, in fact, now have disguised actually from the principal logic. So what is that they have like, in a sense, mistaken? First thing is, he says that they all started giving descriptions for the explanations of say caste, how it functions, how, in fact, no, like, in a sense, it actually organizational functions and all. But he says that they were explaining them as though they were origins of the caste. So they're all explanations, in fact, now occupational, religious, whatever, but by no means they're the explanations of the origins of caste. That is what he says. This is one mistake. And he says we have yet to find out why occupational groups have become caste. This question has never been raised by these many of these anthropologists and sociologists preceding him. And the second aspect, or the second mistake, which many of these people preceding according to Ambedkar, is that they have conceived caste as a unit by itself and have forgotten or neglected that caste, in fact, no, one caste is cannot, in fact, exist on its own. A caste, in fact, no, is within a system of castes actually. So all the person of the first thing, of course, as we have seen, that they were explaining their functionality and then saying that there are origins. But the second thing, in fact, no, they have taken caste as a unit, singular unit by itself, and then discussing about that. But they have not explained how a system of caste has been originated. So these are the two things, in fact, now Dr. Ambedkar have highlighted as the shortcomings of the earlier works. Mind you, my dear friends, these kind of explanations by Ambedkar were at his age of 24 years, as he has not still completed his master's degree in Columbia University. just as a student of say masters, he has come up with this wonderful kind of a theory of origin of caste system in India, which so far has not in fact now been like in a sense disproved. So it is still so like in a sense is valid actually. So let us see what he has done, linking the question of theorizing caste with the question of the essential nature of structural principle. Dr. Ambedkar calls it as the mechanistic process of the formation of caste. It is mechanistic because it is, he says, it is inevitable. This line of approach, in fact, now also conjoins with another approach called as the psychological approach. He brings, as I said, both them, he couches both of these structural and then psychological or behavioral principles in the origin and also the maintenance and then perpetuation of caste system. So what is it say, like in a sense he was trying to understand all is say kind of a exposition into the caste kind of this thing. Ambedkar says he's identified primarily endogamy, and he says endogamy is the only characteristic that is peculiar to caste. As if we succeed in showing how endogamy is maintained, we shall practically have proved the genesis and also the mechanism of caste. So he says endogamy is the basic principle actually. But here, friends, many of you and even a lot of people, when they read Ambedkar, when he says endogamy is the basic premise, and naturally, like one question crosses the mind. There are many societies in the world where endogamy is practiced. Almost all ethnic groups, in fact, now endogamy is there, and uh, many anthropological, in fact, now like in a sense foundations, they show that endogamous groups they exist across the world without giving rise to the problem of caste actually. But to that, Dr. Ambedkar says the situation of India is entirely different. People, in fact, know in different, say, kind of a societies in the world over, those societies they have heterogeneous groups, different groups, maybe like in different races, form into a kind of an equal kind of a thing. But here in India, the problem is basically the homogeneity, in fact, now parceling itself into the heterogeneity. Caste become a problem altogether new in a character which is wholly absent in the situation constituted by mere propinquity of endogamous social or tribal groups. That's exactly what he says. See, other societies do not possess the cultural unity, where, like in a sense, in fact, no, endogamy does not create a kind of a situation like caste. But in India, the cultural homogeneity basically, which is homogenized, later becoming in fact into heterogeneous groups called as castes actually. So this is the first difference that he talks about, in fact, now why Indian case is different with regard to endogamy. And he also goes on to say that the endogamy basically itself is foreign to India. This is another kind of a appears a strange kind of proposition. He says that prior to its emergence, the most characteristic aspect of Indian society was exogamy. He says, I quote, nothing is therefore more important for you to remember than the fact that endogamy is foreign to the people of India. Various gotras of India are and have been exogamous. So are other groups with their totemic organization. So he was saying, in fact, no, the premise of the clan organization, where totemic clans, totemic or non-totemic, these clans, in fact, no, basically are they are exogamous. But the critical evaluation of various characteristics of caste leave no doubt that prohibition rather than the absence of intermarriage, that is endogamy, to be concise, is the only one that can be called the essence of caste when rightly understood. It appears, in fact, now very, very peripheral when we say that uh, endogamy basically is the one which has brought in the caste kind of an order. But Ambedkar says that exogamy is the basically, like, in a sense, native to India in the Indian social groups, and a formation of, or he, in his own words, I would rather say, the superimposition of endogamy over exogamy means the creation of caste. That is the theorem that he brings in actually for the formation of or the origin of caste. The superimposition of endogamy over exogamous groups, exogamous clan organization. This particular phenomena basically, he says, is the origin. So he says that caste in India means an artificial chopping of the population into fixed and definite units, each one prevented from fusing into another through the custom of endogamy. Thus, the conclusion is inevitable that endogamy is the only characteristic that is peculiar to caste, and if we succeed in showing how endogamy is maintained, we shall practically have proved the genesis and also the mechanism of caste. So here, in fact, not bringing out this particular theorem called as the superimposition of endogamy or exogamy as the formation of the caste, in itself, in fact, no, he has drawn several kinds of references from across the different societies in the world, and that tries to, in fact, now couch them in a peculiar situation called as India. So one is, in fact, no, he brings in the laws of imitation and also the laws of, in fact, no, excommunication. Let us get into this particular thing. He says that the first varna or class to form into caste, sorry, the first ever caste which has been formed out of the varna, which is a class system basically, more fully than others even today, is the Brahmin class. Today we find the Brahmin having, in fact, no fully formed caste, where you have caste, subcaste, you have clan, the gotra, or in fact, no, which is also called as Vamsham. Then you have say Pravara, Sapinda, and you have several intricate kind of a fully developed kind of a caste actually. So therefore he says that it was the first, the Brahmin Varna, which is as a class, in fact, no, it has formed itself into a caste. Reasons, of course, we'll come back later actually. He says that from Brahmins, it spread to others through a very logic of the situation of one class enclosing itself as an endogamous caste. So he says that there was a situation where one particular group enclosing itself, becoming, in fact, a class becoming into an endogamous caste, and a situation where that others found that, in fact, no, they were all against, closed against actually. So this, Dr. Ambedkar says, when some non-caste groups consciously became caste actually. See, this is when they found that there was a Brahmin fully formed caste and all. The non-Brahmin classes also, they started becoming into caste. Others had no choice because they were closed against. To bring in this particular kind of a logic, Dr. Ambedkar brings in two important propositions. One is he brings in Walter Bagehot, his book in 1915. That was the latest book. In fact, Ambedkar uses it in 1916. The book from that Walter Bagehot books, Ambedkar brings in the infection of imitation. How imitation, in fact, occurs in human society, and here particularly how that infection of imitation, in fact, has been instrumental in creating, in fact, a class system into a caste system. Second, he brings in Gabriel Tard's laws of imitation, his book called as Laws of Imitation. So here, Dr. Ambedkar, using these two kinds of propositions, he was in a way forerunning M.N. Srinivas, probably by 5.5 decades. We see when M.N. Srinivas brings in his process of Sanskritization in his 1971 book, Social Change in Modern India, where he says that the lower castes, in fact, in their attempt to elevate themselves, they try to imitate the upper caste, so-called as superior caste, where he was talking about, in fact, that process of imitation. Here, Dr. Ambedkar, using that particular, the kind of a process of imitation, almost 55 years before M.N. Srinivas. He was almost anticipating him actually much before, that non-Brahmins became castes following the models of their superiors, the Brahmins. Besides imitation, he says that he uses a very, very excellent formulation to explain this process. He says that, I quote, some closed the door, others found it closed against them, unquote. So he was saying, in fact, now that has been the process through which how, by imitating the people, others also, in fact, now fashioned themselves into a kind of a caste, actually, enclosed or rather endogamous caste, actually. So that is one process which he is talking about. Second process is was indicating is the excommunication, the process of excommunication. How, in fact, no, some people have been consciously shunted out actually, and then forming other groups and all, by which some groups became caste. So, if to explain, like in a sense, to this sort of thing is very easy, but at the same time, we need to explain how such a thing could be maintained. See, like in a sense, okay, fine, we understand suddenly, or in fact, in the process of history, some class societies, they have enclosed themselves as castes, and other people, in fact, have imitated, and then the castes have been formulated based on the endogamy, the superimposition of exogamy, I mean endogamy over the exogamy. Fine, but how it is maintained? It is like in the sense practically sometimes becomes very difficult. Why? Because in a particular society or in a particular group called as a caste group, they basically, like in a sense, when it is based on endogamy, there must be, in fact, no equal number of marriageable women for marriageable men actually. So sometimes what happens, in fact, no, is that men, in fact, no, who attain the age of marriage would be more than the available of women. Maybe the otherwise, there may be like women are more in number than men, in fact, who are available for them. So in such cases, what happens? They'll turn into a situation called as surplus man and surplus men, women actually. So how to get rid of this surplus in order to maintain this endogamy? Otherwise, if there are intercaste, like in a sense, some alliances, then the caste itself fizzles out. Caste, in fact, no, it continues, or it has been continuing rather, based on the endogamy. So if there are, in fact, no people who are surplus, and like in a sense, marriage basically is a biological kind of a thing. If people try to spill over into other kind of unions and all, the whole institution of caste, in fact, no becomes very, very difficult to, and becomes very unviable actually. So for that, Dr. Ambedkar says the mechanism of endogamy, how this endogamy has been, in fact, no brought into kind of a this thing. He says that so far, I know no scientific explanation of the origin of the customs of sati and forceful widowhood has been brought in. In India, along with the caste, there are these customs called as sati. Sati is, in fact, no forceful burning of the widow on the pyre of her husband, disposing her, in fact, no, along with the corpse of her husband. This sati tradition was there, but there were no explanations, in fact, no, as to how it has originated, why it has originated. Similarly, why some women, in fact, no, have been forcefully retained as widows, basically. So Ambedkar brings in these honors actually. We have plenty of philosophy to tell us why these customs were honored, but nothing to tell us the causes of their origin and existence. That's what he was saying. They have been glorified, but no particular explanation as to why they have been originated have been found here. So Ambedkar brings in this particular aspect. He says that both surplus men and surplus women constitute a menace to the caste if not taken care of, finding suitable partners actually. Otherwise, what he says is how the surplus women have to be disposed. So disposal basically, in fact, of the surplus woman when her husband dies, for that disposal to maintain the proper endogamy of the caste and all, sati as an institution has been brought in. So he says that sati, burning of the widow with a deceased husband, this is a means in fact, no, to maintain the disparity in a particular caste group. It comes into the maintenance of the caste actually by dealing with these surplus women. So one is sati, burning her. Second, in fact, no, is if not burned, you forcefully make her a widow so that she cannot be eligible to remarry. So this is one way, or these are two ways actually to dispose of the surplus woman. But what are the ways of, in fact, now disposing surplus men? There are again two ways Dr. Ambedkar suggests to dispose these surplus men. One is celibacy. A man who he becomes a widower, he, like in a sense, goes for celibacy. He doesn't marry, and then he lives a kind of a life of a widower. That can be one, but it cannot be, in fact, no said for many, almost all the men, because biological sex is, in fact, no biological thing, and they need some partners and all. Probably there is every chance that, in fact, no transgressions they happen. So therefore, there is another kind of a mechanism. That mechanism is child marriages. To find women for them to marry is to go to the ages which are under the marriable age. So therefore, the institution of child marriages, Dr. Ambedkar says, have come in to deal with this aspect of dealing with the maintaining the surplus men in the society. So therefore, all these four practices which Ambedkar says, basically, they are there for maintaining the endogamy, therefore maintaining the caste system actually. So therefore, friends, here Dr. Ambedkar brings in the correct, or rather, in fact, a very viable explanation as to how these kind of customs have come and how these customs abated the maintenance of the caste system. But now we'll come into, friends, basically caste basically is a system. So having explained, in fact, now on the psychological basis of laws of imitation and then other things and all, Ambedkar uses these two principles: structural principle of caste and then basically the psychological aspects. He brings in all aspects in dealing with the caste and then an institution of caste. So here he says that we need to understand that caste in the singular number is unreality. A single caste, a tribe, in fact, is a full society. Tribe is a full society, and a tribe can inhabit any place as a tribe, as a singular tribe. But my dear friends, caste cannot thrive on its own singularly, because caste always is a part society. It is not a full society, whereas a tribal society is a full society. Caste is only a kind of a part society. So therefore, wherever we see in any kind of habitation, we see the coexistence of more than one caste. A single caste cannot live on its own. So therefore, caste is only in plural number. There is no such thing as caste, but there is always, in fact, no such thing called as caste system. Castes are related to each other. What is the basis of this relationship? The relationship is based on the foundation of inequality. If you look at caste system, actually, across, it is said that there are 6,000 castes, basically. And you take anywhere in the caste system, among the 6,000 castes, or among the castes, in fact, which are present in a particular geographical this thing, or a geographical location, we find that no two castes are equal. No two castes are equal. Each caste, when seen in relation to the other, should be either superior or inferior, but never equal. So this is the way how castes have been, in fact, now related to each other, forming a system. And in this particular kind of a system, unequal system, we see the kind of in fact, no, like in a sense, phenomena that there is an ascending order of respect and reverence. If you start from the bottom, there is an ascending order. That means an inferior caste relatively should show respect and reverence to its immediate superior, and then they should show it to the next superior. Then like that, in fact, no, there is an ascending order of respect and reverence. When somebody gives respect, we expect that there should be mutuality, but it's not there in the caste society. There is a descending order of hatred and contempt. There is despising of people, keeping people at bay. So these are two, in fact, no, like in a sense, behavioral aspects which are there among the caste society. One is it is found, this whole system is founded upon inequality. Second, there is a ascending order of respect and reverence. Some people, they demand respect and reverence. That means, in fact, no, one has to be put in a pedestal of, in fact, no, worshipping them actually. And in return, when you see in the downward trend, you see the kind of a reference of hatred and contempt. So how it is regulated? There is a regulation based on the concept of purity and pollution. There is, in fact, no absolute pure to some, intricate pure to some, and intricate pollution to some. And in fact, no, there is a regularity of behavior based on the consideration of purity and pollution. So this, of course, any student of caste, in fact, no, we must have studied these particular aspects. I am not dwelling so deep into these things because they are quite common. But I will next move to the question as to why how Dr. Ambedkar explained as to why caste system has been formed. We have seen how caste, in fact, in his own explanation, how they have originated, the structural and also the psychological aspect, how they have been formed. Fine. And we have seen how the system has been formulated based on inequality. And the question he moves is actually why there should be a system formed. He says that the system, in fact, has formed because to institute a situation of the minority dominating over the majority. So it is also another kind of what you call unnatural kind of a situation. World over, what we have seen as a natural thing is the majority people, they dominate over the minority. They oppress them. They, in fact, take advantage of the minority. Even today, like in the sense, if you take United States of America, what we see is the blacks, Afro-Americans, they are despised, they are oppressed. And then along with them, there are Native American Indians. Along with them, there are Hispanics, Mexican Americans. They're also looked down. But put together, what is their number? The blacks or African Americans in United States of America, their total percentage is just 14.2%. And the total minorities, actually, Afro-Americans, the Native Americans, Native American Indian tribes, and then, in fact, the Hispanics, put together, their total number is 16%, a minority. Similarly, you'll see the majority, in fact, dominates over the minority. But in the Indian case, my dear friends, the reverse happens. The minority, in fact, they take all the advantage of the aspects of the society. It is the minority which dominate socially, economically, politically over the majority for our many kind of centuries actually. So it is for this reason the take care of the interests and the dominance of the minority over the majority. The system has been formulated and the system has been maintained, and the system, in fact, now has been checked and rechecked, and then it has been guarded. This is exactly what Dr. Ambedkar says. And to create a situation where generally it doesn't happen, a minority can never, in fact, for a long time, unless in the times of emergency. That is, like in a sense, if there is, if you try to threaten, cajole, only, in fact, if you take up arms, if the minority take up arms against the majority, when majority doesn't have any arms, then the majority would listen to the minority actually. But that is a temporary situation. But here in the caste society, what we see is not many, like in a sense, times arms, in fact, have been directly used. There is some sort of a what do you call was like in a sense consent. It is not by, in fact, like in a sense direct physical threat and all. There is some sort of a consent by the oppressed groups that they accept the superiority of the minority. This is a very strange situation. It need to be explained. So, but in the first place, how it has come up, Dr. Ambedkar explains in his book Annihilation of Caste. There is something called as CEAPAW, CEAPAW. He says that the dominance of majority over minority, or the negation of liberty, equality, fraternity to the majority is an ideology called as Brahminism. That's what Dr. Ambedkar says. An ideology called as Brahminism. It works in fact now on 6 fronts. One is creation of caste system, which is based on graded degradation. Caste system where the majority in fact have been divided into small groups of castes, and each are made to mutually exclusive groups actually, because it is said, like in a sense, caste in fact how it works, we'll try to go into the next, how the psychology of caste functions. One thing is caste system. Second thing is banning education to the majority. Why education? What comes after education? Education in fact now gives rationality, or education gives the capacity to think. So the majority in fact now should be kept in ignorance, not be given in fact an opportunity to think of their continuous kind of an oppression. So therefore, in order to not to make them think, ban of education has been imposed upon. Fine, you have not given them education, but when you create them into physically and then mental say vassals, where they are put to in fact no physical kind of a slavery, no matter whether you are educated or not, in fact, now people who suffer, they try to understand and then try to stand up. So in order to deal with that situation, the system of caste, in fact, no, or Brahminism, it imposes saying that ban on arms. The majority people, majority caste should not take up arms actually. So there was a ban on arms actually. Then there is ban on the property, accumulation of property. Why? Because if people have in fact no enough resources, economic resources, there is no situation where they should depend on others for in fact no. So ban on the property, they have to always depend upon the property groups actually. And then you have ban on authority, they were not allowed to take up in fact no positions of authority. And finally, like in a sense, caste system and then oppression of women, there is a direct relationship actually. This is one important thesis by Dr. Ambedkar. He says that caste system has been originated by the oppression of women. I will come back to that particular point later on. So this is how, like in a sense, by this particular maintenance of this banning of this particular system and all, how the caste system in fact no while been created and maintained to see that the minority groups they take up superiority over the majority. To explain, okay, fine, but to talk it is okay, fine, but how exactly it works? So it works not by the domination or by the oppression, physical direct oppression by the minority, but through a mechanism of consent by the majority themselves. It is something like, in fact, no, the victims, they become willful vassals. The victims themselves, they say that it is because of us, our own wrongs, that we are now in this position. So we have to suffer this actually. So this is a kind of a mentality. And that is the reason why Dr. Ambedkar says caste doesn't have any kind of a physical properties, but caste is a notion. Says that in fact no, we cannot see caste, we cannot listen to the caste, we cannot smell a caste, we cannot in fact no have some kind of a pursue a shape of a caste. Caste do not have any physical properties. But to a question whether caste is there or not, the answer obviously is yes, because caste has been the important organizing principle of Indian society. But where is caste? Then Dr. Ambedkar says the address of caste basically is in the mind. He says that caste is a notion of mind. It is at the psychology of the people actually caste operates and caste continues. That means the very mechanism of caste actually Dr. Ambedkar explains at the level of the psychology. He says that he explains how the psychology works upon. He says that caste is a device. He gives a definition. He says that caste is a device designed to divide. Probably the simplest definition any, in fact, now social scientist could give is this definition by Dr. Ambedkar. He says that caste is a device. He says it's a device. Device means a tool. By saying so, Dr. Ambedkar says he is in fact now debasing the creation theory of caste, the celestial, this what do you call, in fact now divine creation. He was completely debasing that. He is saying that caste is a device. It's a tool created by the members of the society. So caste is a device which is designed. In fact, now every tool has a design. We have devised, in fact, now a screwdriver to put in the screw into a wall or to a wood or to unscrew it, actually. So every device will have a design or a function. So caste is a device which is designed only to divide, never unites, actually. Caste never unites. The psychology of caste never unites the people. It always, in fact, now is exclusionary. It creates mutually exclusive, mutually repulsive units called as caste. Never, in fact, now it brings them together, actually. So therefore, it is a self-regulatory mechanism. Each caste tries to check the other. Each caste tries to control, check the other. It is some sort of, in fact, now, like in a sense, self-regulatory mechanism. I'm just giving you a suggestion to understand these things much more deeply. I would rather suggest friends to go through these two books, Caste in India, their origin, mechanism and all, and then Annihilation of Caste, where especially he explains about the mechanism of the caste, actually. So therefore, he says very clearly that is a self-regulatory mechanism, and it is a graded degradation. It is called as graded degradation. That means the whole society is divided into grades, A, B, C and all, D and all, but you don't find any kind of equality even among each grade. He says caste system is inequality among unequals. It is inequality among unequals, actually. Unequals are parceled into a kind of grades called as varnas, actually, like in a sense. So this parceling we need to understand. And there is a kind of a behavioral trait. He says that there is a philosophy of kick the below and salute the above. If you look into the behavior of the people, individuals in a caste group, all caste groups, the philosophy is like this: you kick those who are, you try to look down those who are below you, and you try to give respect to those who are above you, actually. The psychology, the behavioral trait would be everybody wants to see somebody below them. Everybody wants to see somebody below them and then try to look them upon low. I think so. I'm clear on this particular thing. It's a psychological behavior which goes into every member of the caste, actually. And the other important thing with regard to psychology of the caste is both the beneficiaries of the caste system, those who are getting benefit, those who have reserved education, those minorities who reserved education, those reserved authority, power, those who have reserved control over economy, they are the beneficiaries of the caste system. And the victims of the caste system, those who have been working, they're called, in fact, now are the labor caste. There are, in fact, no minority as the leisure caste. They are the appropriating caste, and these are the labor caste and the leisure caste, actually. You can see that, actually. And these victims or the labor caste or the leisure caste, both these groups, actually, they are the slaves of the same ideology called as Brahmanism. They all believe that it is because of their theory, that because of their karma, they have become like this. So therefore, Ambedkar says religion here acts as the engine of oppression in the caste system. Everybody, both the beneficiaries and the victims, they all, in fact, know, or they all accept the same ideology. So that is basically, that's why he says in other areas, a slave knows that he is a slave because physically one knows that he is a slave. But in Indian society, Ambedkar says you have to tell a slave that he is a slave. Then only he will try to understand and then try to revolt. So therefore, caste is such kind of a blinding kind of a experience. It's a psychology which has been encultured. That's what Dr. Ambedkar says. Caste has not become natural. Caste is encultured. caste psychology is encultured in every individual in the families, actually, in their families, basically. These exclusiveness about the caste. It's not that always the so-called Brahmin or somebody in the upper beneficiaries, they come and tell you. It's not, in fact, they don't impose. They kind of, in fact, know, like in a sense, exclusiveness of caste. The psychology of caste has been encultured by every member in every particular caste group, actually. That is the sort of the what do you call the peculiarity of the kind of a system, basically. Even the victims, they enculture their own children into this kind of a psychology of caste, basically. The mutual exclusiveness, in fact, no, of each caste against the other naturally creates a kind of a psychology of we and they, how we are here, how we are superior to these people, and how we are inferior to others, actually, and how we need to maintain the superiority. So this is the premise where the mechanism, in fact, Ambedkar explains in the structural sort of principle called as the caste system, based on the psychology of caste, basically. So now we'll come to other aspect. Caste, in fact, now, is it exclusive in the society? He says no. Caste has its relationship with different kinds of other institutions, basically. And this relationship, in fact, now is very, very intricate, actually. So to be in brief, my dear friends, I will try to take up at a few aspects. Ambedkar has very clearly explained that caste is related to class. Caste is related to class. To be more clear, Ambedkar says that in India, there are three aspects, three organizing principles called as one caste and two types of classes. One caste and two types of classes. One type of class is the Marxian class, where Marx talked about rich, poor, other things and all. Okay, we do have that kind of a rich, poor class system. But Dr. Ambedkar says within the caste system, there is another kind of a class consciousness. This particular theory, in fact, no, it was only Ambedkar as a social scientist who brought it out. That caste system in itself, in fact, no, has a kind of class consciousness. This is a big theorem, actually. Dr. Ambedkar has brought it. This thesis is, in fact, no, quite like it takes a time to explain. But to put it very, very simply, I will give an example. Basically, if suppose there is a conflict between two Brahmin castes, because Brahmins in the Varna, they have several caste groups are there. There are several, in fact, no. Trivedi is different from Dvivedi. Chaturvedi is different from other. They're different castes, actually. Triparti, Dvipati, actually, like in the sense, a Chitpavan Brahmin, a Saraswata Brahmin, Kanyakumja Brahmin. In South India, you have, in fact, no, the priest Brahmin, and then there are called as Tadinam Brahmin, who in fact officiate the say the death. You have Dravida Brahmin, you have, in fact, no, Saraswata Brahmin, like several types of Brahmins are there. They're all endogamous again. They belong to the same Varna, but they're endogamous, actually. So they marry within their own, their caste. If suppose there is a conflict between two Brahmin castes, will any third caste enters in between them and try to settle some sort of a agreement between them, try to give peace? Will both these parties allow a third party to come in? They never allow, actually. They try to resolve their issue on their own. They don't allow any third party. Or if any third party volunteers to come, they don't, in fact, no, entertain that, actually. But if suppose there is a conflict between a Brahmin and then a person belonging to a washerman caste, a dhobi, or from a barber caste, or from, in fact, no, a cobbler, a chamar, or, in fact, no, a parier, or a mala, or a madiga. If there is a conflict between these two, a Brahmin and any of these so-called, in fact, no, producing castes or labor castes, will all others, in fact, no, just sit tight and then watch how these people, they tackle themselves, how they conflict themselves? No. In such situation, what happens is all the Brahmin castes, all the Kshatriyas, all the Vaishyas, and in fact all those who are above that particular caste, they together form into a class and then try to take on this particular caste. That particular consciousness, Dr. Ambedkar says, is a class consciousness. And he explains it very elaborately, but for the paucity of time, I'm just stopping it over actually. There is a relationship between caste and class actually. There is a caste, and the two types of classes are there in Indian society. And then next thing Dr. Ambedkar says is there is a relation between caste and gender. Ambedkar says, if you read this thing and all, he says that the endogamy of formation of classes basically is an oppression of on women. Endogamy, if you suppose you say it's a restriction on the sexual liberty of the members of a particular caste, that imposition is not equally there on the men and women. Men are encouraged to have relation with other women actually. They say that in many castes, in fact, no, in almost all castes, the patriarchal system, it gives some kind of a leeway for the men to have extramarital relationships. Our society is so cruel that we have created a prostitute caste, a caste which in fact no consists of only prostitutes. All the women in fact no in that caste, they are supposed to be prostitutes actually, and all the boys or men in that caste are deemed to be pimps actually. Our society is such a cruel society. So therefore, this restriction is not entirely on the men, but the restriction is put on entirely on the women. So therefore, Dr. Ambedkar says it is based on the oppression of women that castes have been formed, and then castes are being continued even today. So there is a relation between gender and caste. And if you go deep into this particular thing, my dear friends, even gender and caste, those dynamics in fact are different in different times. If suppose there is a conflict between two castes, so-called upper caste, physically attacks a lower caste basically. In the physical attacks, generally what happens is there is in fact no physical attack causing in fact no, like in a sense beating, murder, and to the extreme in fact no raping their woman, insulting their woman and all. But when it happens, my dear friends, even the women of the so-called upper caste, they also join hands with their men, forgetting that they are women. They join their men and encourage their men to rape the women of the lower caste. There are very, very intricate dynamics in the caste system actually. So there what happens, the caste and gender get fused. The women in fact now become conscious as caste, not as in fact no women as a gender actually. So these are all very, very intricate, complex dynamics of caste, which Dr. Ambedkar only could explain. No other social scientist worth in fact now have gone into these in detailed kind of mechanisms of caste. And the third area is, my dear friends, the relation between caste and geography. It may sound peculiar, but Dr. Ambedkar says there is a relation between in fact now caste and geography. Geography in fact now is a human geography. The villages, to be more specific, he says that in the villages, the castes in fact now they have taken the physical position of spatial segregation of streets based on caste, spatial segregation of households belonging to a particular caste. They live in separate streets. That's why he says you take a compass, go to any village in India, even today, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, go to any village in this country, you will find Agraharam in the same direction, separate street. You will find Thakur street separately. You will find Bania street separately. You will find say a Weaver street separately, a Goldsmith street separately. You will find in fact no the what you call cattle herders separately, right? Separate streets on the same blueprint basically. Outside the village, you will find separate streets of the cobblers, leather workers. You will find a separate street of in fact no drum beaters and grave diggers, and then you will find a separate street of scavengers who together in fact now form the groups of untouchables actually. So this is what Dr. Ambedkar says, caste and geography. This blueprint in fact now doesn't change. Even if, like in a sense, a person who is from a street of say scavengers, he has become so rich coming to a city, and then he has become very, very rich. He has amassed a lot of wealth, but he cannot come to his village back and then own at least 2 cents of land in the Brahmin's Agraharam and build a house there. Can it happen? No, impossible. He'll have to pay with his blood actually. So they are very, very passionately guarded, watertight, spatially segregated compartments called as castes. That is where you can say physically caste. Even in the cities also, urban locates, it's very easy to find the caste. So therefore, there is a relation between caste and the geography. Then Dr. Ambedkar says caste is related to economy. We know Jajmani system where Jajmani system is nothing but caste, and then in fact no kind of occupational groups, how they are related in fact no into a kind of a system of interdependence basically. But the inequality remains actually. And in addition to that, Dr. Ambedkar says in the caste system, you will see a phenomena called as enforced poverty. And then there is a different kind of caste-based mode of production. Probably when we deal with caste, in fact, no, and economic this thing, we will talk about those things. But there is a relation between caste and economy. There is clear relation between caste and power, because the system of caste allows only one particular caste group to be the rulers. All others, in fact, are banned from authority. And then there is a relation between caste and religion. Ambedkar defines, saying that the official caste is the official doctrine of Hinduism. I will repeat once again. He says caste is the official doctrine of Hinduism. That means you cannot find any Hindu without belonging to a caste. We cannot find a Hindu without belonging to a caste. That means all Hindus must belong to a caste, basically. So that is the basic kind of a organizing principle actually he talks about. And of course, he says that in fact, no, the castes and these inequalities, they have the divine sanction. Human beings must have made it actually, but they said in fact, no, the gods have themselves have created actually. And in the name of the god, this particular thing actually, this inequality happens basically. So there is a relation between caste and religion. And there is a relation between caste and morality as well. See, the ethics and morality basically, however, you feel that they are humane and all, they all depend on from which source they come from. No, the society would not be ready to hear morals from a scavenger, no matter what sort of a virtue that person would have. So morality basically also have a relation to the caste. The acceptability, in fact, no, of morality, it also, in fact, no, goes with the caste. And of course, finally, there is a relation between caste and resource conservation. He says that the producing caste, because they produce, they know how to produce and all, they know the value of conserving the kind of a productive kind of a resources. And he also says that the leisure caste, they do not care for, in fact, no, they conserving the resources of production. That's the reason why he talks about, in fact, no, they waste, the burn of lots of production. The yajnas, in fact, no, lot of ghee is done, like in a sense, milk is this thing. So he says that they don't, in fact, no, have respect for production, basically. Anyway, so caste has relations with, in fact, no, almost all aspects of the society, which Dr. Ambedkar says it is thoroughly and intricately connected, basically. So now I'll come to the aspect of whether caste is only there among the Hindus in this country. No. Dr. Ambedkar says caste is present even among the non-Hindus. Like in the sense, if you take religion, for example, caste has, he says that caste is a virus. Ambedkar says caste is a virus. Yes, it is much more, in fact, no, what do you call, virulent than even, what do you say, COVID-19 or even whatever, like in a sense. He says that it's a virus. Caste is a virus which creeps into, in fact, almost all aspects. And he says that caste has crept into all the religions in this country, whether they are native religions or the foreigners, like Christianity, Islam, in fact, no, and other religions which came from outside. And even among the other religions other than Hinduism, the Jains, the Buddhists, and other caste, Ambedkar shows that there is caste among every religion. Uh, uh, Host, will you please mute Mr. Tirumala, please? Yeah, thank you. So when caste basically, like in a sense, in fact, no, he says that there are castes among the non-Hindus also. Ambedkar very clearly shows among the Muslims in this country, there are three varna things called as Sharafs, Jalafs, and then Razals, in which in fact now converts from the scheduled caste, they remain as scheduled caste over there. Converts from OBCs, in fact no, they remain separate as there. Converts in fact no from the Brahmins, converts in fact no from the Rajputs, they retain that particular specific positions and all, and then converts like in the sense people who came from outside. Actually the people who came from outside, they are called as Sharafs actually, along with them actually. So therefore, my dear friends, the point which I'm trying to point out here is that Muslim society is not uniform. There are castes among Muslim societies, different caste groups among Indian Muslims. They marry among the same caste. They worship among their own, in fact, no specific castes, based these things, say mass, and they bury among their own caste-based graveyards. Similarly, is the case with Christians. 15% Muslims in this country, basically, as Dr. Abhay very clearly shows that among the 15% Muslims, 96% Muslims are native, in fact, no converts from the OBCs and scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. Rather, 92% are OBC caste. They remain as caste actually. They have the same kind of a position, actually, OBCs. Similarly, if you look into Christianity, Ambedkar very clearly shows that castes among Christians actually. You will find a Brahmin converted Christians. The, like in the sense in Andhra, we can show that Reddy converts are there, Khamma converts are there. You will have Kapu converts, Velava converts. Then you have converts from Malas, Madikas, Reddy. Each caste, in fact, no, they, of course, all are Christians. They marry in their own respective caste groups. They worship in their own respective caste-based churches. They bury their dead in their caste-based, in fact, no graveyards. So there are castes among Sikhs. There are castes among, in fact, no Jains. So the point is, like in a sense, casteism basically is a Hindu phenomena, but the reality check would reveal that caste has infected other religions in India. That's what he says. However, it is only the Brahminical scriptures that give religious sanction to the casteism, because other scriptures, they don't have, they do have doctrinal equality, but they live as castes actually inequally. But you don't find that in their doctrines. But it is only in the Brahminical scriptures that give religious, in fact, no sanction to the casteism. So it may be said that although casteism has its genesis in Brahminism, but it is being practiced by followers of all religions in India. So this is one dimension actually, friends. And then finally, I think so I'll come to the consequences of caste system according to Dr. Ambedkar. What are the consequences? Because there are some people, and then the, like in a sense, during the days of Ambedkar, like in 1930s, when the Hindutva project, in fact, has been coming up, the philosophers, in fact, like Savarkar, Dayanand Saraswati, Aurobindo, including Vivekananda, they were saying that caste is a very, very important institution for India, and it is the steel frame which kept Indians, in fact, now unchanged. And all these four people, they said that caste is important. It gives benefits to the social system of India. There, Dr. Ambedkar, in fact, now says that what are the actual consequences of caste system. He says that that's why he says it is a pity that caste even today has its defenders. That's what, of course, he says. He means that the first and foremost thing that must be recognized is that Hindu society is a myth. He says that in India, there is no society at all. We have multitudes of societies on the name of caste, but never a unified society. That's what, in fact, now he says. Hindu society as such doesn't exist. It is only a collection of castes. Each caste is conscious of its existence. Its survival is the be all and end all of its existence. Castes do not even form a federation. That's what he says. Castes even do not form a federation. I continue. Caste has no feeling that it is affiliated to other castes except when there is a threat, in fact, no, on the basis of religion. When there is a either as Hindus or Muslims, in fact, no, there may be a kind of federation of different castes. But such exigencies are not there, then again they form, in fact, behave like castes themselves. So what Ambedkar says, there is an utter lack among the Hindus, what the sociologists and anthropologists call the consciousness of kind. That means we are one. We all are one. That particular consciousness of kind, Dr. Ambedkar says, sociologists and anthropologists, in fact, know what they call it as consciousness of kind is not found, in fact, among this society. In every Hindu, Ambedkar says, the consciousness that exists is the consciousness of caste. That is the reason why he says that Hindus cannot be said to form a society or a nation. Sees they can't form a society or a nation. That is why in the later version of formulas he says that how to form a unified society. That is the agenda, in fact, that he was talking about. We will talk about it later. But he goes saying that isolation and exclusiveness are the anti-social spirit which is found in the caste system, actually. He says that caste has killed the public spirit. Caste has killed the sense of public charity. He says that charity ends with the caste, starts with the caste, and ends with the caste, actually. And for a person, an individual in a caste, his loyalty and then responsibility is only to his caste, not to the whole society, basically. So therefore, there is no appreciation of the meritorious. And he says that caste has made public opinion impossible. That means caste society doesn't allow a platform of dialogue among different castes to come together, sit together, and then have a common understanding how to think about the progress of their own society. We will never find 2-3 castes coming together, even among the victim castes. The victim caste generally, in fact, no, they should, if they realize that they are victims, they should automatically come together, join hands together to see that their victimhood, their oppression is resolved, they are liberated. But this psychology of caste basically does not allow, it does not allow the victim caste, in fact, no, come together and then have a platform of dialogue, actually. Dr. Rathay, I'm concluding, actually. I will, if you allow me, I will take 3 minutes, actually. Right?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So finally, my dear friends, having talked about Ambedkar's exposition of caste society in this country, its origin, its mechanism and maintenance, let us in the final stage look at what is the ideal society in the ideas of lives of Dr. Ambedkar. So here I would like to quote Ambedkar himself, because he talked about an ideal society. Basically, I quote, he says that an ideal society should be mobile, should be full of channels for conveying a change taking place in one part to the other parts of the society. In an ideal society, there must be many interests consciously communicated and shared. There should be varied and free points of contact with other modes of association. Following John Dewey, my dear friends, Dr. Ambedkar says two important, in fact, no, say aspects are very, very vital for a society, an ideal society. Two important things. One quality is social endosmosis, and the second quality is, or the prerequisite is, organic filaments. He says that these two features are very, very important for any ideal society: social endosmosis and then organic filaments. What is a social endosmosis? It is, in fact, no, so social endosmosis is there is mutual give and take between people about the ideas, about, in fact, expressions, and about the feelings of fraternity, actually. That should be there among the people, actually. It is a kind of a social endosmosis. Like we all know the process of osmosis among the trees. where from in fact no, the roots, they bring up water and then the minerals, they supply to the last leaf over there, and the leaves in fact no, they produce, but due to photosynthesis, they produce food, energy, and then they give it back. There is an exchange actually. But in the caste society, Dr. Ambedkar says the labor caste, they keep on producing, and the labor is appropriated by the leisure caste. And in this caste society, he says that there is no dignity of labor. People who produce are looked down upon as low caste actually. So this social endosmosis is not there. Second thing is organic filaments. Organic filaments, in fact, now is the feeling of oneness, the feeling of unity of being, which of course we call it as consciousness of kind. These two are not there. They are important, Ambedkar says, for an ideal society. Another, he says that, I continue, I quote, if you ask me, my ideal society would be a society based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. An ideal society should be mobile, should be full of channels for conveying a change taking place from one part to another part. There must be exchange of, in fact, no ideas, exchange of, in fact, no beneficial things, exchange of, in fact, no, say, feelings of what you call fraternity among these two. So this is the ideal society, Ambedkar says. But in this Cutler society, the caste society, Ambedkar says, in fact, no, a conscious and determined minority, a conscious and determined minority always create conditions in their favor over an amorphous, divided, and ignorant majority. That has been, in fact, no, goes on, and this continues, in fact, no, in a caste society. And friends, finally, Ambedkar says that castes are formed. The caste system is formed, and caste is encultured. Therefore, it can be changed. So that's the kind of a what you call project that he embarks upon. So thank you very much, friends. I have tried to, in fact, no, encapsulate a very wide range of aspect called as society in India, and Ambedkar's, in fact, no, what do you call, like, in a sense, dissection of caste society in this country, and his understanding is very vast, very unique. I just, in fact, no, try to couch it, in fact, no, in 1 hour and then 30 minutes, which is very difficult, like, in a sense. But I try to touch upon different facets, and I thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Satyapal Kumar, sir, for your excellent presentation on outlining the Ambedkar's ideas on Indian society or society in India. In fact, this lecture brought amazing new things which we are ignorant of. And dear participants, I welcome your, if there is any question from your side, you please pose your questions to the Professor P.D.Satyapal Kumar, sir. Is there any question from anybody?
Sir, Shankaran here, sir.
Yeah, please, Shankar.
Sir, I first of all thank you for such an informative lecture, and a lecture where it felt like a journey. It was not like a lecture, definitely, because there were a lot of important things which exposes the hypocrisy within one's own culture also in reality. And I'm quite interested in the idea of toxic socialization. That's my real passion. So how do we speak about that? That you had said the point that in India the slaves have to be told that they are in slavery. Okay, then how do we make them conscious? How do we make a person conscious about his own toxic socialization, such that it doesn't spread as a sacred ritual, or it doesn't spread as a sacred worship practice, I go to say, like something like that. How do we make it understand actually?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shankaran, for bringing out this.
I'm just
Yeah, like in a sense, uh, yeah, of course, toxic sociology, that phrase basically, like in a sense,
toxic socialization, sir. Socialization and education.
oh, finally, like in a sense, yes.
Yeah.
I'm an anthropologist. I use the term enculturation rather.
Yes.
So both, of course, we use the same. See,
Yes.
the point is, like in a sense, we say that the psychology of caste itself is encultured and socialized, to be rather say. See,
Yes.
it is not that somebody who benefits from the caste system also realizes that in fact no, that we are beneficiaries and others basically are victims. So naive are the people in fact no, who get oppressed by the caste system, because castes are taken up in fact now as a kind of a say, like in a sense a kind of a divine kind of a say sanction or a kind of a creation. And therefore I also talked about in fact no, my butler being was born into a butler caste also is something is predestined actually.
Yes, sir.
Predestined, rather in fact now I'm the like in a sense a reason for my own kind of a position. So the victim in itself in fact now is looked upon as the reason for the victimness actually.
No,
Right?
sometimes, yes, sir. Sometimes the timidness given within a culture is a weapon actually. We don't
Yeah,
realize
that's right.
timidness is a weapon actually. In fact, timidness is just going to encourage a mask of goodness within people actually, but it
Yeah.
is not really going to encourage any kind of action or any kind of bounded but I mean boundless creativity. Nothing. It's going to be there in talks, but it's not going to be there in any action. Definitely.
Yeah, that is exactly what I would like to say, that I used I want to in fact now draw again Ambedkar here.
Yes.
He says that a social revolution never happens in India.
Hmm.
He says that as long as caste psychology remains, it does not allow any kind of in fact no churning of mind or like in a sense uh, verifying one's own position, creating a platform of dialogue actually.
Yeah. Actually, what I want. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go on, sir. Go
Yeah,
on.
please go ahead. You're trying to say something.
Now, actually, what I had noticed is that this question which I had spoken is that, like, within your own culture, sometimes we find out that we strive very, very hard to achieve something with great love and affection. But at the end of the day, there is a hypocrisy within the culture saying that you are doing it for yourself. And once the achievement happens, the point is that who has made you do it? There is a diabolical opposition which only strips you off from your dignity, which strips you off from your own achievement, takes off everything for their own selfish heritage and honor. It's very amazing actually, like how the system just works in that way. And it also strips off the dignity of the people who inspire you, irrespective of
Yes,
who they
that's true.
belong, who they belong. There is a very good lecture saying that, okay, learn from the people who do not have anything. But at the end of the day, the same people are called robbers of your privilege, robbers of your
That's
own
right.
this thing in the name of reservation and in the name of other spaces actually. It's
Mhm.
very diabolical that how Ambedkar is always hit based on religion, or which people hardly even have a minuscule of understanding, and on reservation which people have a null understanding equally. They just like
That's
to
right.
run the ego of injustice within themselves actually.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, like in the sense, I would also try to inform that Ambedkar, in fact, no, was not in favor of using the word called as reservation. To be more precise, he was
Absolutely.
using the word called as representation
No, he actually
in the
wanted a
constitution.
separate electorate. Separate electorate was the
Yeah,
real concept actually.
that's a different kind of a proposition. I would rather say that
Okay.
Ambedkar, in fact, no, in pushing ahead his social movement,
Mm,
he moved from one position to another position, being a dynamic kind of a thing.
absolutely.
So separate electorate was one particular important aspect actually, which
Mm,
was thoroughly negated. In fact, no, by many personalities, including Gandhi. Gandhi was used as a kind of a what do you call face to the Hindu Mahasabha.
absolutely.
I think so. You and I, in fact, no, we very well understand that the Pune Pact, which in fact, no, many people think that it is a pact between Ambedkar and Gandhi. It was not so actually. Gandhi never signed on that. It was
Yeah,
a truce between Hindu Mahasabha and then Ambedkar actually.
No, no,
So
actually,
therefore,
the point which I have noticed is that the reservation was formed because Gandhi went into a whole life fast.
yes,
That's why it was like, so he was never a part of the Pune Pact. Yeah, yeah, please complete.
no,
Sir.
no, he was never a part. And then, of course, Gandhi, in fact, no, was against representations as well. Ambedkar was never begging for reservations, actually.
Yes, sir.
I even would like to say that reservation is a word used by the colonizers.
Yes, sir.
Like in the sense, wherever they have colonized in America, all the tribal lands, in fact, no, they colonized, driven them, and then settled them in the deserts and called them as reservations.
Yes,
Similar
sir.
case with America, Australia, and then also Africa. So reservations basically is something that the colonizer gives, doles out as a mercy to the natives.
Absolutely.
Ambedkar very clearly said, I do not like the culture of reservations. I never beg for that. He said, I want a culture of representations where people based on their percentage of population represent in all walks of life in a democracy. Of course, that is one aspect of it. And then he himself, in fact, tried to operationalize it in 1932 when he has got that communal award. And then after so-called this Pune Pact, he was a member of Lothian Committee, which is also called as, in fact, Indian Franchise Committee from 1933 to 2035, which formulated the Government of India Act, actually. In that, Ambedkar, in fact, now has bring in the list of scheduled castes and list of scheduled tribes, to be precise, to give the representation. Okay, that's the one aspect of it. But coming back to your point, in fact, now of toxic socialization, basically, see, there are things, in fact, now, like one thing is spread of education, basically, is one thing that creates awareness about one's own position. But Ambedkar is not fully, in fact, now with regard just to education. He made a distinction between literacy and education. There are literates, but they just have degrees, but they don't, in fact, be critical of their own society, basically. And he says that if vested interests, in fact, joins hands with education, that he says that it's almost like a double-edged sword. It can cut in here and also cut in there. If education, in fact, brings you a kind of an awareness and then a kind of a social good, he said the Brahmins, by reserving education for them for thousands of years, should have been all good, actually, but they were infested with the vested interests, actually. So therefore, it is creating consciousness in the minds of the people. The victims, in fact, they must realize that they are the ones. The oppressed majority should realize that they're being oppressed and should be ready to join with the other oppressed groups. In this particular society, each one understands they're oppressed, but at this, they're not ready to join hands with other, because the casteism is there here. They feel that they're either superior to somebody or somebody, in fact. So this is the kind of a consciousness, in fact, that is what Dr. Ambedkar says, need to tell a slave that he's a slave, then by understanding only he will try to revolt, actually.
And so, I feel that sometimes when we want to break out also, we cannot really know the channelization of entering the space, because one of the most important and honorable things which the oppressed caste have space is that they never want any unnecessary sympathy or any unnecessary empathy also, which is not going to empower them or which is not going to help them. Because
that's right.
Today or any day also, they were able to study, they were able to know through the injustices. So that's why there's a difference between a literate and an educated mind, as you said, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, and I said that timidness is a very big weapon given by your own community, and it's a backstab of to your own personality, actually.
Exactly.
So how do we break out from that space also? Because we get shielded in that space so deeply, like a golden cage of convenience, that when we want to come out, we are clueless. It's a dark alley for us, actually, to come out also.
That's right. So I would rather, in fact, favor the project of Paulo Freire, that consensitization, basically. Consensitization, in fact, and then galvanizing into an action, basically. That definitely comes out, actually. See, there are many changes that have brought in the caste system. We have seen many people through consensitizing people, in fact, right from Buddha, right from Jyotirao Phule, Narayan Guru, Periyar, so, you can see Ayyankali, Ayathidas, even Savitribai. All these are examples, in fact, those who have brought these changes, remarkable changes. Otherwise, like in a sense, we would not have, in fact, no, the many of the conditions that these oppressed people, this oppressed majority, in fact, today, they'll not be, channels would not be open for the education or employment, or even, in fact, to live a respectable life. At least, in fact, many things have come. That is because, in fact, some kind of sort of a social revolution, but it need to be maintained. It need to be maintained. It need to be made consistent. Each generation, basically, like in a sense, what we need to understand basically is the beneficiaries never commit suicide. They don't give anything on a platter. No, never. It is always, in fact, these groups who want something like, in fact, if you want freedom, it is not given to you on a platter. You will have to fight for it. So those people who are change seekers, they should strive for the change and also should be conscious enough to maintain that change. So that's the reason why, in fact, whatever benefits that the revolution has brought, when they are going away, if you don't know what are the benefits, when they're gone, also I can not be able to understand. It is, in fact, being very, very conscious about that particular thing. And my feeling is social movements are very, very important. I feel so that, in fact, like in the sense, each teacher must be a social activist, because they are in a best position, in fact, to create this kind of civic, in fact, mind in the people. Actually, we need to look into the people as citizens of this country, not as those who belong into some particular artificially created caste and then grade themselves like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, I have some comments here, sir. The caste system successfully created division among humans and deprived of dignity for majority of humans in India, and created a negative self-image among vast majority of sections of people in India. And what are the on the psychological aspects, particularly the worldview change that is need to be facilitated. So caste prescribed negative attitudes towards fellow humans, and caste prescribed a negative attitude towards oneself. How this attitudinal change, how the formation of the positive self-image, what are the processes that can be encouraged, and what Ambedkar has to say on this? Because because
Dr.
sir,
I think so. I have slotted an entire lecture on that particular thing under the rubric of the topic "Desideratum for Annihilation of Caste." So that particular talk, in fact, it tries to deal with exactly these practical things, these operational things as to how to get rid of the caste and how to tackle caste, basically. So as a response, in fact, right now, probably whatever I try to give you, it would be very, very partial and then conscripted. Probably, I think so. I'll deal with this aspect because we have devoted an entire lecture for that. Thank you.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, that is Ambedkar's prescription. Actually, we can discuss on that there. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So, is there any question from the participants? This caste system, I need one clarity, sir. It is a divine sanction, or it is a human invention?
Yeah, according to Dr. Ambedkar, it very clearly says that how castes have been formed. So he said it was never a divine sanction. Actually, it is never a divine sanction. He says that castes have been. That's what I ended with that particular thing. Since castes have been, in fact, invented, and the castes, in fact, have been encultured, so you can change the caste. So therefore, there is no, like in a sense, the point is that it's not like in a sense kind of a celestial creation. Ambedkar does never says that, and he also says that if at all anybody attributes, in fact, no, the inequalities are unequal in human systems such as the caste, he would rather say that it can be called as a spiritual fascism. So therefore, at least in fact, no, he says that let us what do you call grace the gods by not attributing caste to them. Actually, it is perfectly human creation. It has been created, in fact, no, as I said, Ambedkar's own definition, caste is a device designed to divide. When we say device, it's a tool created by the people, the minority, to what do you call take advantage over the majority. So according to Ambedkar, and according to, in fact, no, my own understanding, caste never has been, in fact, no, a divine sex. On the pretext, on the name of the gods, it is always we see humans, in fact, no, discriminating and then oppressing.
Yeah, you are right in the sense that caste need to be taught. Unless otherwise, children don't know what is caste and what are the notions associated with that. So in that kind of intentional teaching or equipping the children in the caste culture by parents, parents are instrumental and society is instrumental in that. So that's how the younger generation or future generations will be knowing about what exactly caste and what are the caste sanctions and all those things. So if those things are not taught at home or in the school or in the society, the caste will disappear, because it is the formation of the worldview. When people at their time of birth, caste is ascribed from outside, but the person who is born into this society is not known unless he is educated or trained in that particular traditions or customs of the caste. So in that way, the educational system in India and also the policy structure and the intentional research to tackle the issue of this socialization, negative socialization or toxic socialization, whatever. So those things need to be addressed. That's what I feel, sir.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, like in a sense, when we talk about the psychology of the caste, people, in fact, know, like in a sense, take in insults as a matter of kind of a tradition. Suppose for us, in fact, no, the Telugus, we carry surnames. If anybody makes a social, anthropological study on the surnames, actually, the scheduled castes and the OBCs, if you look into those surnames, in fact, no, are all insulting surnames. Names of the animals: Pilli, Pamu, Kukka, Nakkala, Mandala, Gedela, Aula, Mekala, Kukkasavu. So you get all these kinds of insulting names, basically. And if you look the other side, you will find Venelakanti, Nemalikanti, Rudrapati, like all those kinds of this thing. But nobody, like in a sense, rationalizes these things, reasons out these things. Actually,
wow.
People feel that they are divinely given. Even if my surname is Pandi, I don't never feel bad about it. I feel that Pandi is my godly given name, and I own that, and I also arrogate based on that. Similarly, castes are also, in fact, no, have been attached identities. They have been, in fact, no, like in a sense, attached to you, and we own them and then arrogate based on them, actually. So therefore, as you rightly said, the education system, basically the kind of a curriculum that we study in the perfect civic kind of education is not being given. And the classrooms, in fact, no school, college or university discusses the problem issues of caste, the problems of the caste, and the inhumanities of caste, rather making, in fact, what do you call education in this country, not just, in fact, giving you a kind of an enlightenment, it becomes an organized ignorance. Like in the name of education, we don't understand the reality. We don't discuss the reality as such. So therefore, it's, as you said, yes, toxic socialization. Naturally, we know about the wrong things, glorify the wrong things, and never see eye to eye the real, in fact, problems of the society, and making the citizens or the future citizens to understand the necessity, to understand the necessity and the responsibility to find a way out, and then chart that course. Yeah.
Particularly, we are committed to offer trainings in the 21st century skills required for our present the students and scholars and the future generations. So, in that direction, how Ambedkar's conception of Indian society and the suggestions will help help people acquire the 21st century skills.
Yeah, Dr. Rataya, century, the number of century doesn't matter actually. Say a number of a century, whether it is 10th century, 11th century, 21st century, century itself, in fact, doesn't bring out anything unless you bring the right kind of understanding among the people. Caste, in fact,
Sir, we are not able to hear you.
I'm sorry. Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Audible, sir, please.
Audible, sir.
Oh, now we are able to hear you, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, in a sense, caste, in fact, despite being, say, anti-social, despite, in fact, being oppressive to the majority of the population, these ideas have been thriving over centuries. 20th century, like, in a sense, if you say that there is, like, in a sense, many of the people have the opportunity because of the constitution to receive education, but still we have not got that kind of a social moral education that is required. That sort of a rationality, in fact, is not guaranteed. So what I would say is that 21st century knowledge or a 21st century education system, unless it is really intended to change the what do you call the basis or the foundational aspects of inequality in this country, bringing in the expositions and then understandings of Ambedkar and the like. So whether even this particular inequality would continue 22nd century or 23rd century, or even goes further as well. So therefore, it requires, in fact, a critical thinking. The criticality basically to impart that kind of what you call education, the right kind of education, rather, in fact, now if you will, if you are what do you call, like, in a sense, successful enough to counter the hypocrisy, in the name of education, and then try to impart the right kind of understanding among the people, to become, like, in a sense, equal citizens, to look at each one, in fact, as equal, with the same capacity and all, with mutual respect, this society would continue to be a kind of an equal society. That's the reason why it requires a social movement, a real social movement, to change this particular attitude. Yeah.
So I feel that before social movement, there must be a pro-cultural movement inside the homes, sir, actually. Because what I have seen is that most of the people always confuse process over substance, actually. Like what Ivan Illich had spoken in his Deschooling Society. There is always a manipulation within parenting about how process is being sanctified in like a sacred doctrine or like a dogma over the substance. The child is capable of asking substantial questions, but that is always being held down, and that's why the critical thinking is not increasing, actually. The critical thinking is never increasing.
Yeah, I would rather.
And there is no healthy interaction between a parent. There is no healthy interaction between an elder and a younger generation.
That's right.
Across the table, because we have to fight or we have to shout. We have to fight or we have to shout, because there is, as you said, spiritual fascism. There is a diplomatic way to tell that, like they'll say Tirukural statement saying that what you know is just a handful of sand, and what you need to know is the world.
Yeah,
And they will just
that's
say
right.
this and just walk out very easily. They will not sit down
That's
and
right.
talk across the table and ask
That's right.
questions.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you're right. Actually, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. The problem basically is, in fact, no, we need to understand that there is an ideological conflict in this particular society. There is an ideology which, in fact, no, wants to benefit the minority always, and then it tries to propagate their convenient, in fact, no, discourses in the society. And there are no, like in a sense, equal, and then like in the sense, what do you call, equally sufficient kind of a propagation of a democratic ideology. So this is always, like in a sense, in fact, no, there is a conflict of these ideologies. Basically, whosoever propagates their ideas in the society, they automatically, in fact, no, get the say acquiescence of the people. But as you said very rightly, yes, the education, in fact, no, I'm not just talking about a formal education. The kind of an education, social education, that should go into, like in a sense, bringing up a child, the criticality, in fact, no, of assuming one as a citizen of this country or a member of the society, that itself should change. In my argument, Ambedkar says that this happens, in fact, no, with dealing with both caste and gender together. Like in a sense, oppression of women, as Ambedkar said, oppression of castes are based on the oppression of women, and the real liberation of women is possible only with the destruction of the caste ideology. So therefore, these things basically, like in a sense, when the things get propagated, and then people feel that they all, as long as they get socialized in the same kind of a thing, so they keep completely doing these things and all uncritically. So we need to impart that criticality, in fact, into the minds of the people. And yeah, as one philosopher said, one must dare to reason. People they never, in fact, know, like, to assess their own ways of life. They never feel that it is necessary to assess what exactly they are doing actually, and whether it is beneficial to the majority, or beneficial to the society, or even beneficial to just few people. We don't do that. So we need to impart and then train society into those areas. Otherwise, it is possible. Otherwise, how these social revolutionists in this particular country, even though they themselves are not, in fact, no, when they have not gone to big schools or big colleges and all, they could create that kind of a consciousness in the people, which resulted in revolutionary changes. So therefore, it is possible. It is difficult, very, very difficult, but it's not impossible. It has to be taken up as a kind of a task. That is what I feel actually.
Because what I have noticed is, as you have spoken, the diabolical space that you respect and honor one person who's superior, but the other person, what he gives us is the wrath. He gives the contempt.
Yeah,
He gives
yeah,
the he gives the, what we say. You are like a rubber band. He speaks. He shows an arrogance
that's
like
right.
a rubber band. He shows like arrogance like a rubber band. He says, if you don't do it, you are only going to lose it.
That's the
And
point. Yeah,
it's a very universal statement. Taken for grantedness is a very universal
yes,
universal attitude and a universal statement, which is common in
yes,
every culture. Which is common in every culture to maintain hierarchy. And the point
yeah.
is that you can say that if I'm not going to do it, you're going to stop studying. You're going to stop doing it. So the process is just being indoctrinated. The substance is not
That's it. Yeah,
yet.
you're right. I cannot agree with you more actually.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Ritraya. I think so. Uh, I have another call actually. You're not audible. You're on mute. Dr. Ritraya, you're on mute.
So thank you very much for your illuminating lecture and about the different aspects of caste and society in India, and bringing Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's conceptions and theorizations of society in India. So those things are really helpful to widen the understanding and to raise the awareness levels. And also to when people listen and reflect on these realities of devastation caused by caste system in India, and the divisions and the disparities and degradation and dehumanization and deprivation of the dignity for humanity, and abuse of the power and all those things. Really very helpful by listening to this excellent lecture. So we are thankful to you, and thank you, dear participants. Yeah, we are going to end this session. Yeah, I thank once again, I thank Professor P.D. Satyapal Kumar, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.